geometry and word problems. So let's take a look at two problems. We're going to do a geometry problem, then we're going to do just a generic word problem. We're going to break it up into two. And again, our focus here is writing the equations where we're not taking a look at, well, how can I just figure it out mental math, which is a great strategy, but we're going to focus on how do I set up an equation. And you may look at some equations and go like, these are really simple. I could do this just in my head, which is awesome. I love that. But we are practicing writing those equations. So as they get more and more complicated, you've done some practice in some simpler ones to be able to have that strategy solid. All right, so let's start with the geometry problem here. So the sum of the measures of the interior angles of the parallelogram is 360 degrees. Write and solve an equation to find the value of the variable. So we have our diagram here. They've labeled the interior angles, and they've given us some information in this word problem here. So they told us the sum. So right off the bat, I know sum is adding. So I'm going to be adding the interior angles together. So I already have some picture about what this equation is going to look like. And they tell us that the sum is 360 degrees. So that's a total, that's an altogether. One of the things we want to think about when we're writing equations is looking for a total amount. If I see a total amount, then I know my equation is going to have a total on one side. So I'm going to set this equation up so that I have the total amount on one side. There's my 360. And since they told me that the total is equal to the sum of the measures, I'm going to add up those other measures, those interior angle measures on the right-hand side of my equation. So I've got a parallelogram. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different angles here. So I want to make sure I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different angles that I'm working here. So here's my equation. My total is equal to the sum of those 4 angles. Once we have the equation, then we're just starting to work with our plaid here. We're starting to work with solving our equations. I have no parentheses here, but I do have like terms, and you can use shapes to kind of put those terms together. So if you want to circle all of the variables that have an x and then put a rectangle around all the constants, do it, whatever makes sense for you. So x plus x is 2x. 35 plus 35 is 70. So I've combined like terms that I can do. Next, I'm going to deal with adding and subtracting. So I see addition over here on the right-hand side, so I want to get rid of that. I notice that on the left-hand side is my constant, so I'm going to try to move my 70 over to the other side by subtracting. Opposite of adding, 70 is subtracting on both sides. I subtract, I get 290 on the left. These 70s cancel out. Let me show that they cancel out here. So these 70s cancel each other out. So I'm left with just the 2x on the right and 290 on the left. Divided by 2, I get 145 is equal to x. So both of these angles are equal to 145. This one would be a nice one to check. I could add those all up. So 145 plus 35, I know that's 180. That means these two would equal 180. When I add 180 plus 180, I get 365. So looking at a geometric figure, writing an equation to solve for our missing pieces. All right, let's take a look at a straight up word problem. So we're going to have a real world situation here where we again, write an equation. That's what we're practicing to solve this particular, the question of this situation. So at the movies, you order 3 boxes of popcorn and a bottle of water. The cost of the bottle of water is $1.75. Your total cost is $9.25. I hope you heard that word right in there, total cost. Write and solve an equation to find the cost of 1 box of popcorn. So they're asking for 1 box because in this problem we've got 3 boxes that we've bought all together. So a couple of things here. I noticed that we do have a total cost, so I'm already thinking about what that equation is going to look like. The first thing we really want to do here is figure out what our variable is going to stand for. So since they're asking us to solve for the cost of 1 box of popcorn, that's what I'm going to have my variable represent. I'm going to define my variable by saying this is the letter I'm going to use. This is what it's going to stand for in this particular equation. So we've got 3 boxes. I only really want to know the cost of 1, so I'm going to use the word B for a box of popcorn. You could use the letter P for popcorn. You could use X if you just really would prefer to stick with X, whatever letter you want. Cost of 1 box of popcorn. Notice I didn't just write box of popcorn because I don't want to know how much it weighs. I don't want to know how many colors are on the box. I don't want to know how many boxes they have behind the counter. I want to know the cost. So when I get to the end of this and I start to write out how many boxes, I can go back and say, all right, this was the cost. I need it to be in dollars. So my equation, let's set this up. Again, we notice that this tells us the total cost. So that's the popcorn and the water together. And when I'm looking at the popcorn and the water together, I'm going to think about how to put those together in my equation. But I'm going to put my total on one side. So here's my $9.25 all by itself on one side of the equation. Now I'm going to think about the rest of my equation. So I know I have a bottle of water. That bottle of water is just $1.75. That's it. Done. I also know that I'm buying 3 boxes of popcorn. So whatever it costs for one of them, I need to multiply that by 3. So I've got 3 times B in my equation. So I have 3B, I have $1.75. If I was at the counter and they said, this is how much it costs for popcorn, this is how much it costs for water, I would add those two together to come up with my total. So I'm going to add those two together. So this is the total. This is how I'm put the total together. Your equation should tell the story of what's happening. And this equation tells me, oh, you bought 3 boxes of popcorn. I know that because you told me what the B stands for. And you bought something for $1.75. What was that? Oh, that was the bottle of water. So this equation should really represent the story in your word problem. From here, we're going back to solving our equations here. So no parentheses, good there. No like terms on either side, so I can breeze right by that step. Next, we're going to subtract the 175 from each side. So I do that. I get 750 equals 3B, again, because my 175 and my 175 cancel each other out. Next, I'm left with $7.50 equals 3B. So from here, I need to finish up by dividing. Divide both sides by 3. I end up with 2.50 equals B. When I go back to what that means, again, this is a word problem, so I should end up with a sentence to clarify what my solution means. I end up with the cost of 1 box of popcorn is $2.50.